Okay, so as it turns out, we didn't have any good openings for this episode. So instead, I'm going to offer you a soft reading of Edgar Allan Poe's classic piece, The Raven. Wait, is Edgar Allan Poe copyright? Is Edgar Allan Poe fair use? 1923 public domain. Okay, I'm good. God, that would have been stupid. Okay. Once upon a midnight.
Welcome to the No Experience Podcast, where two collision-challenged NPCs who have already clipped through the floor are here to talk about anything and everything. I'm Ammar Al-Abdullah, and I'm joined, as always, by my Nordic co-host, Jared Hines. And today we're here to talk about how Bethesda has ruined modern video games.
I'm Caucasian?
I'm going to give you my cock, Asian. So, Jared, how familiar are you with the effect that Bethesda has had on modern video games?
So, not a lot, but at the same time, a little bit.
I think once I tell you, you'll understand what I'm saying.
I mean, my position is I don't play RPGs, right? I don't like RPGs. It's not my thing.
Sure.
But with the advent of Bethesda, I've seen them everywhere. In a very specific type of RPG.
Yeah.
In specific, that is just, it's intolerable, it's boring, and I hate it.
Yeah, that's a problem, for sure, that Bethesda games have, is that they're an altogether not particularly interesting form of video game, but that's not the problem that I'm referring to. I mean, that is a problem, right? That every video game that comes out now, regardless of its genre, needs to have tacked on RPG elements just to soothe the Bethesda crowd. But that's not the problem with Bethesda as a company and some of their business practices that they've established over the past 10 to 15 years. Like, that is included, but that's not the problem I'm talking about. There's a bigger problem. There's something else that stinks here that they've done that has ruined the way that video games are made and released.
Okay, how are they shitting on us?
Jared, first I'm going to take you back. I'm going to take you back to the late 90s and the early 2000s when Bethesda was but a burgeoning company, okay? And they released some very fine RPGs. Elder Scrolls, Daggerfall, Elder Scrolls Arena, Elder Scrolls Morrowind, one of my favorite games of all time. I fucking love Morrowind. And then things changed. Bethesda acquired the license to Fallout. Fallout was a RPG made by a different game studio, whose name eludes me at the moment, during the 90s. It was a top-down isometric shooter with some very interesting philosophical and moral questions about living in a post-apocalypse. It was a very good series of games. It did not catch on the way that studio had expected it would, and as such, they had to sell the IP to Bethesda. And then Bethesda released Fallout 3. Now, this is where the big problem that Bethesda pretty much invented and has now spread like a cancer to every other game company, this is where it germinates. It's with Fallout 3. Fallout 3, on release, was a buggy, barely finished mess. It was just filled to the brim with bugs and exploits, basically a broken game. A game that looked like it was not finished, okay?
So basically it was the first Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh, yeah. And Cyberpunk 2077 does not happen the way it happened if not for Fallout 3. Bethesda, with the success of Fallout 3, communicated the idea that it is okay for game companies to release games that are unfinished, and that they will be patched into a playable state over time, or worse still, patched by the fan community into a playable state. And that is spread. It's spread like this nasty, ugly fucking growth on your ass, okay? Look at some of the biggest games that Bethesda has released. Fallout 3, barely finished. Skyrim, at release, barely finished. Fallout 4, barely finished when it came out. Fallout 76, completely broken. Just busted. From beginning to end, the game did not work. And yet Bethesda dropped it because they knew that they were like, we can patch this into a playable state. People will buy our shit even if it's not done, right? And you see that everywhere now. It is this ugly, nasty little thing that has pervaded other video games. So take the most recent example, right? The most recent, most impressive example, Cyberpunk 2077. When that game came out, it was a joke. It was a laughingstock how broken that game was, because CD Projekt Red, under immense pressure from the fans, had to release an unfinished game. And Bethesda, in the early days of like the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii, sort of hatched the idea that it's okay for you to release games like that. And I hate it. What's your opinion on this, Jared? Do you think it's a bad thing?
Well, yeah, obviously I think it's a bad thing. You shouldn't release shit that isn't finished. But one of the things that came to mind while you're talking about this is, I'm wondering, is this what led to the advent of developers holding back content from games to then sell separately later on?
As DLC?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the DLC craze can be chalked up to a lot of things. Xbox Live, for everything it did to bring online gaming to a better state, did a big disservice, because now the idea of games as a service has blossomed into something completely unrecognizable. It's not just paying a $5 fee every month to play online with your friends. Now it's paying a $5 fee, or paying a $20 fee every month to play online with your friends, okay? Plus the cost of the games, plus the cost of your internet, plus the cost of whatever DLC you need so that you and your friends are playing the same version of the game. I don't think Bethesda is altogether to blame for that, because Bethesda, for all of their faults, all of their failings, and all their foibles, releases mainly single-player experiences. They generally don't do multiplayer experiences. And the one time they did, in the form of Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online, everybody recoiled and rebelled against the idea because it was so poorly made. I don't think that's their fault. I don't think Bethesda can be blamed for the state of DLC games and online gaming. I think that mostly comes down to Xbox and Microsoft. That's mainly their fault. Don't worry, there's plenty to be mad at Bethesda about, but that's not one of the things that you should be mad at them about.
Isn't Bethesda also one of those studios that's like it has a bad notoriety for like development hells and pushing their employees?
Todd Howard, it's famous that during the development of Fallout 76, they kept pushing new shit that they wanted in the game onto the developers under a stricter and stricter timeline. It's no wonder the game turned out the way it did, right? Like, it's no wonder that when Fallout 76 came out, it was literally broken into pieces. It was a fucking video game held together by Band-Aids and duct tape, right? Because, like, the development hell proceedings that they were all going through, it's the logical extreme that would happen, right? So but that's not something unique to Bethesda either. Most game companies put their fucking developers through, these hellish cycles with long hours and short deadlines, right? Where it's like, we gotta get this shit out the door right fucking now, like.
Which is a big issue, and it's actively being talked about and fought against as we speak.
Oh, absolutely. Like, game development as a job is one of the worst things you can do to yourself. It is one of the worst jobs that you can get into. Unless you're working with specific studios, like Sony notoriously treats their employees pretty well, because they allow their employees the time they need to make a good game, right? Like, they pushed back God of War and Uncharted 4 and Spider-Man, like, by years to make the game a solid product, and so they didn't put undue stress on their developers. I I think that Microsoft and the companies that generally release content for Microsoft, so your Bethesdas, your Lionheads back in the day, were under much more stringent timelines to develop games, and it led to shittier games, unfinished games, and games with no polish or passion put into them. That is, I think, sort of an issue that Bethesda's not unique in, but it's definitely something you shouldn't excuse them for. They are just as much participating in the destruction of young developers' wills and creativity and desire to continue working in the video game sphere as much as any other company, and they should be held to task for that. Yeah, so I think that, that's something that you should be mad at Bethesda for. There's a lot of reasons to be mad at them. And it's, that's one of many, okay? I just don't like the idea that game companies can now get away with putting out unfinished games and people will praise them for it. It's also why I hate early access. I hate early access games because you're paying full price for a game that's not even fucking done yet. I think that it's a toxic mentality for how to make a video game, and I think that gaming as an industry could be so much fucking better if we held companies' feet to the fire and forced them to say, we're not going to play your game unless it's finished when it comes out. Okay? I think that that's something we need to break the back of, and I think Bethesda needs to be the first to get the fucking axe for that. I was hoping Fallout 76 would kill them, but it didn't. They got right back up and kept walking, and now everybody's creaming their jeans over the idea of a new Elder Scrolls game, and it's like, dude, did you not fucking learn anything? Have you not learned anything from the past 5 games they've released? It's gonna suck. It's gonna be broken and buggy, and you're gonna have to wait like a year, maybe 2, for it to be patched into a state that's even remotely playable. How is this good to you? It confuses me. I don't understand people who can argue that it's like, no, Bethesda makes good games. They don't. They don't make good games. They make very hyped games. They get people, roused up into a shish boom ba crowd about the fucking games, but I don't think they're good games. I think that they are bad games. I think that they are incomplete games. And oh man, I'm getting heated and I'm repeating myself, but you understand.
Yeah. Stepping back for a second to talking about like getting people to put their foot down on shit. There have been a few times, I mean, even in gaming history where, that's happened and it's worked out very well. But just in general, calling to people's like personal sense of responsibility or motivation to do things when you're talking to like a large group of people, it's not very reliable to like expect that to happen, right? Which is one of the advantages of stuff like policy. That's why our country doesn't run on. It's why our country doesn't run on the honor system, right?
Yeah,
because for the most part, doesn't work out very well.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm not trying to attack people's character, right? If you enjoy these games, that's fine. I just think that you should hold Bethesda and game companies at large to a higher standard than they're being held to, because they're getting away with a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as much as I loved Cyberpunk 2077, and as much as it spoke to me as a game, I don't respect the way that gamers as a class acted in that context. They were sending death threats to developers. They forced the game out the door and then complained when it was not finished.
Yeah.
During one of the worst pandemics in history. How do you justify that?
You don't. Gamers are some of the most intolerable people on the planet, funnily enough.
And we speak to you as people who play a lot of video games.
Yeah, we are gamers.
Yeah.
We unfortunately identify ourselves with this group of people.
Yeah, which is why I want them to be better. I'm not coming at them from a position of an outsider looking in, shouting at them and wringing my hands with like moral outrage. I legitimately think that we as a gaming climate can be better and can force developers to be better as well, by not supporting them with our money.
Which is why there's a lot of advantage to starting different initiatives. And I mean, there's tons of initiatives that have come up out of the gaming community, whether it be for charity or trying to get policy pushed or just taking care of gamers.
Yeah, no, we have the power to do shit like that. We're a huge fucking group. The gaming industry is a $32 billion industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible for us to, like, best case scenario, right? Like, my ideal world, Bethesda drops Elder Scrolls 6 and nobody buys it. That's my ideal world, because they're so tired of them pushing the idea that unfinished games should be released, right? Like, I want their next game to fail. And it's not because I have ill will towards the developers or because I hate the people at Bethesda or I have some, like, vindictive fucking, streak inside me that just wants to see them crash and burn. It's because I want things to be better.
You want them to learn. You want an example set and to be followed.
Yeah, if Bethesda went out of business, that'd be fucking awesome, because, like, then those IPs could be taken and handled by companies that actually give a shit, It's sad. And they've committed other grievous sins that you can, yell at them for, like releasing the same game on every fucking console generation. Skyrim, for being a terrible, unpolished mess, has been released on every fucking console.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's insane to me that people have this much of a rose-colored sunglass about Skyrim, when I played it when it came out too, and I even then could see the cracks. I was like, they've done a very good job polishing this to look like a very good game, but this is not a very good game. There is a good skeleton under here, but they are hiding a number of fucking technical issues that do hinder the experience. And I'm not perfect, right? Like, I have nostalgia for games that are like that. Like, Morrowind is another Elder Scrolls game, and it came out in, like, 99 or 2000, like, around that time. 99 to 2001, somewhere in that time frame. And Morrowind is a buggy game, too. It is a very messy game, okay? The difference is, I played Morrowind when I was, like, 6, right? And I look back now and I'm like, this is kind of embarrassing. It's kind of embarrassing that I like this game as much as I do. It's kind of embarrassing that I have to buy this game and then go through the effort of patching it into a more playable state. That's embarrassing. That should be embarrassing. I want people to feel that same kind of embarrassment when they say that they like Skyrim or when they say that they like Fallout 3. Because you should be embarrassed. You should be embarrassed that you like an unfinished game this much. Like, nostalgia aside, be critical about the things that you love. Right? Because they can take it, right? You love this thing so much, then make fun of it. Point out the shortcomings, right? Like, that shouldn't be hard to do, Like, no. I have it with, like, Metal Gear Solid, right? That's my favorite game series of all time. But even I got to admit, it's got big problems. There are big problems in every Metal Gear Solid game. And I will criticize them because I love them. And I think that they could have been better than they were. Because, part of loving something that much is that you should want it to be the best it can be. And I don't think anybody could argue that Skyrim or Fallout 3 or Fallout 4 were the best they could be. Because they weren't. There was so much potential, and it was squandered by a game company that I don't think gave a shit about putting out the best possible product. That's my opinion. And I think people would benefit from looking at games under a more critical lens in that way.
That's a really big problem that, like, we as a species have, don't we? We like to put shit on a pedestal and like to pretend it's perfect.
Oh, all the fucking time.
Or not even pretend. We make ourselves believe that something is perfect.
Oh,
right?
Dude, and you'll see it anywhere. Go to a film school, right? And listen to 90% of the people talk about how Pulp Fiction is the greatest movie ever made. And it's like, I like Pulp Fiction. It is a great movie. It's very cool. And it's got a very unique sense of style. But come on, you're over-egging the pudding by saying it's the best movie of all time.
Straight up.
Right? So it's one of those things, and you can do it with anything, right? It's just, I feel like people need to, and it's partially because critical thinking is not really stressed in, like, in school and in, to people growing up. Critical thinking is not a skill that a lot of people learn. So they don't look at things that they love and be like, I love this thing, and it's okay for me to love this thing, warts and all. But how could it be better? How could this have been a better thing? Right? When I listen to Kanye, I love Kanye West's music. How could it have been better? Right? Like, how could this album have been better than it is? Metal Gear Solid, I love that game, love that series, but I can sit here for hours and tell you all the things that I don't like about it because I've sat down and I've thought critically about the things that I love. And I think everyone should do that. I think you'd be happier if you did. If you thought with a critical eye about, like, what parts of this are things that I don't like so much. Because, it sucks at first because it kind of feels like shitting on something that you love, but once you get past that initial recoil, it really is nice because it means that you love it enough to want to see it be better.
You'll start to love shitting on the things that you love.
Yeah, you will. And it sounds bad when we phrase it that way, but it's true. You'll love games a lot more when you learn to criticize them, but then I suppose also love them in spite of that. You can love Skyrim. I don't care. You can love Fallout 3. I don't care. But you should have wanted it to be better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
You should have looked at this and been like, this is a game that I like, but it's got a lot of problems. Okay? And I'm going to criticize it in the way that only somebody with genuine love and care in their heart can do. Okay? That's my opinion.
It's a lot like the fact that, I love my co-host here. I would not have any other co-host. However...
Bite your tongue, Cuck. Bite your tongue. Watch what you're about to say. You're in dick punch distance.
However, I could have chosen somebody less attractive.
Okay, all right. That's the kind of complaint I like to hear. Yeah, I think we've ranted and raved enough about Bethesda and a lot of the problems that it has. And I don't think Bethesda's unique. I don't think that they are the most guilty of this. I just think they were the first. I think that they were the first to really get away with releasing a AAA title that was barely cobbled together.
They were the flint and steel that started the fire.
Yeah, and now it's everywhere. Ubisoft does it. Fucking EA does it. Recently, CD Projekt Red did it with Cyberpunk, right? Like, you see it all over the fucking place. You can sit here for hours and list off example after example of games that have followed the Fallout 3 the blueprint that says that we just release it just finished enough that people will buy it and be okay that they spent their money on it, and then we'll patch it into a playable state.
You can theoretically make it to the end of the game.
Yeah, theoretically. I kept a crash counter for how long, like how many crashes I hit trying to get through Cyberpunk 2077. I shit you not. I hit triple digits before the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a buggy, messy game. It's been patched into a better state now. Cyberpunk 2077 is a much better game now, but we should have just waited a year and gotten that out of the gate. That's my ideal world, is a world where I don't get Cyberpunk 2077 during the heart of quarantine, and that really blows because it's a game I was excited about. But it comes out right as we're coming out of quarantine, and it's a way better fucking game. And I can look at it and be proud when I say I love this fucking game. Because right now, when I say that I love Cyberpunk, I have to feel ashamed. And that's all I have to say about that.
I think that's all there is left to say. Thank you for listening to the No Experience Podcast. It was nice to have you. Please feel free to leave a like. It helps us a lot. And if you like our content, feel free to subscribe. We post every week, 2 episodes. We are on Facebook, the No Experience Podcast. We're on Twitter at the Dongan Man, which is Ammar's Twitter here. And feel free to come back. We're always happy to have you.
Yeah, tell your friends. Let them know. Let them know that 2 idiots are out here talking shit, basically.
Unless you're ashamed.
Yeah, in which case, expect us to be better.
See you later.
Thanks for listening.